Well,
Am I allowed to say something?
okay, I'm going to put on speaker.
Crazy.
Okay, fine. Somebody want to say something?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like from last week's class, I was trying to decide should I come this week, but I really struggled with what to say. That like a person has to be, no, it's good. That's like, we're in the struggle, they just bring it out to me,
Exactly.
So, but I guess, we all carry the struggle, especially when we come from the Western culture, maybe a non-religious culture, and we were brought up with certain things and certain things. So even though we always want to become closer to Hashem, we also have to like honor maybe that place inside of ourselves that isn't like have that shleimut yet.
Mhm.
It's not full of or I don't know. And I feel like if we go too fast, then there's a damage in that too.
Absolutely.
So on the one hand, I can now I really want to listen to like the Beatles,
Mhm.
and just because I love the Beatles, because there's certain cues.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I feel like, well, you're losing me, not like kosher,
Right.
So it's really like an inner struggle. Like part of me also wants to die like the same Torah, but it's also like I don't know how you do it. I don't know how like there's like a struggle. I feel like I kind of think that's what you're talking about maybe a little bit less.
Yeah, very much so.
I don't know. I don't know. Like
For
I don't know
sure.
how you honor those parts of you that you have inside.
This I'm
That's what Hashem put you in your life.
right. Exactly. Let me just explain. Maybe I should have said this as an introduction to the whole thing. This is a very personal growth in general. Is a very personal thing. You cannot tell someone else at what rate they should be progressing and how they decide to structure their path, their journey, so to speak. It's a very personal thing, and people have to do what they feel comfortable with and at the rate that they're able to internalize it. A lot of that's what I'm saying. A lot of what I'm talking about here is not halacha l'maisa. I'm talking about for halachic shilas. I'm saying you have to have your own rav and you go somebody who knows you and somebody who's really get the paskin on your level. Now, I'm not talking about anything halachic so much. I'm talking about a hashkafah, and the reason why I'm not bashful or embarrassed about presenting things in the strongest possible terms is precisely because I know that this is so opposed to the way that people are brought up in Western society. Not just Bali Tshuva, but also even from people that are more modern Orthodox homes or whatever, if they're not, really sheltered and people go to college and stuff like that. The Western culture as it's developed is absolutely, permeates everything. And it's almost like taken for granted, like this is the way it is. And they're not even questioning whether there's anything wrong with it, because they think, this is basically because, and this is what I felt very early on in my own development, whatever, why I didn't feel comfortable with a modern Orthodox approach is because I always felt that there are a lot of people that, in their effort to fit into modern society, they felt like it was enough of a struggle for them to even hold on to tayyid mitzvahs, let alone this a really Jewish hashkafah, so to speak, rethinking the whole hashkafah. I think one thing that's possibly happened today is that with this whole thing that's coming out now in the universities and with the anti-Semitism and things like that, maybe people are starting to rethink and question if the university place is really where you want to be, because it's a representative. As much as people don't want to see it as it is, look it straight in the face. The whole university outlook is based on a Greek model, a model that is based on Greek idealism, which is virtually diametrically opposed to Jewish values. And people just take it for granted because this is the way to get ahead. You have to get a parnasa, you have to be able to, hopefully, even if they haven't taken the liberal arts model as being, hook, line, and sinker, they may question that a little bit. But l'maisa, because they have to do it. I was just learning something recently about the idea of it was even in the context of this the lesson was talking about the it's a das, which we talked about last week, that if a person is in an environment which is dominated by a certain outlook, it's very, very difficult not to be influenced by that, even if it's very subtle or very and it looks very good from the outside. It seems to be something that most people don't question, and it turns out to be something that can have very, very serious consequences in the end. Even if we don't. I'll tell you a personal story that again, as a stage in my own development. Was that I was very involved with the arts and on so many levels, into theaters, into classic films, into classical music, a lot of these things. That's what's led me to, rethink these things in such depth. And I remember specifically that one of the things that affected me very much was that for two things basically around the same time. Is that I went on a trip to backpacking, as they used to do, through Europe and Israel. I spent about 6 weeks in Europe and 6 weeks in Israel. And I remember after that experience, coming back, feeling that I was, in a sense, more stimulated by Europe than I was by Israel. And that bothered me very much, because it felt like, where are my real roots? That should not affect me like that. That's number one. Number two is, I remember seeing a presentation of Merchant of Venice, and I don't know if people are aware of the theme of that play, Shakespeare's play, and in a sense, it presents a kind of a more of a sympathetic view of Shylock, who was the Jewish anti-hero. That's presented in the play, and it may be more sympathetic than a lot of people would have done at that time. In fact, there was a previous play along the same lines, like Mr. Marlowe, that was much more anti-Semitic. But anyway, the way it was presented was very much, the Jew against the prevailing society, and it led me to question, whose side are you on? It was very clear. It was like the Jew against the Goyim altogether, and it was very obvious that the Jew was the outcast. He was very much on the outside. And I was thinking to myself, look, here you're talking about this cultured Goyim and all the Italy and the Renaissance Italy and this kind of stuff. It was like that. That's something we're taught to look up to. A very, very high level of culture. And then you look at even if obviously the play is fictitious, but to look at that and feel more in common with the Goyim than you do with the Yid, I felt that was a contradiction that bothered me. So it led me a lot to other things happened. Accepted into the graduate schools that I wanted to go to. My whole perspective was to become a music professor. There's a lot of professors in my family. So anyway.
Were you religious?
I was very religious, but I was not totally firm. I was very high up in the conservative Judaism. We were very, very observant on a conservative level, which leaves a lot to be desired. But anyway, the point is that it required a lot of rethinking. Then I went down to Chabad, so changed the plan. Anyway, whatever. So what I'm saying is that everybody has their own, rate of progression. What I'm trying to do is to not allow you to forget that this is an issue, and that this is it's something that has to be dealt with, should be dealt with, something that the person has to take seriously in their lives, because it's just too pervasive. It's too important to ignore. And not only that, okay, so that's like an aloisas aspect. This is if you're just taking what I'm saying in terms of, and I guess last week that was kind of the emphasis, we were talking about Tzfas, like what not to do. But this week I want to get much more into the idea of what to do and what's the idea of Jewish creativity, what is it really all about? Because it opens up tremendous opportunities and tremendous, ability to expand our perspective on the world and life and what we're about and what we're here for. Much, much, much more, absolutely incomparable to anything that the secular world presents. They're not even in the same ballpark. They're not in the same wavelength. It's just not there at all. And so if a person takes the time to, with an open mind, to try to look at what the Jewish approach is, what we're about, and with the giving oneself the leeway, the opportunity to reject what the secular society has presented to us, and realize that we're dealing with a totally different outlook. Then I think it will be well rewarded. So every time you talk about sacrificing something, you talk about the rewards that are on the other side. Say the rewards that are presented as a reward specifically for that sacrifice we give up are very, very, very great. Much more than we're well paid off. In fact, I remember still somebody told me, I don't know when I started out really restructuring these things, and they said something like, to the degree you're guaranteed that the amount of pleasure of hanua that you have, from the Goyish Welt, you're going to have at least that much from Torah and mitzvahs, and that the actual enjoyment, the actual participation. And I used to love sitting, listening to operas and symphonies and things for hours. And it was a very, very intense experience. And say that I would get that level of intensity from a Jewish approach, on the other hand, was a pretty pretty ambitious statement. But I found that it indeed did turn out like that in the end, and much more. So that worked out. I don't have any time.
There's a way forward.
Okay, so let's go on here. There's an importance. Okay, first of all, I just saw something, and I didn't actually. I saw the question, I didn't see the answer, but one of the Shlomo I was learning, he was asking that, given that we were told, we learn about the tremendous pleasure of the neshama when it goes to Gan Eden. When we finally get, after 120, and you go together, the neshama goes to Gan Eden. It's a level of pleasure that it's an ayin lo yirus and you can't even imagine, you can't conceive of the kind of pleasure that the neshama experiences. And this is before. I'm not talking about Mashiach, talking about not even before Mashiach, talking about just every neshama after it's nifter, it goes to a place that it's the reward, in that sense, is very, very intense. And he asks, so we're told that after Mashiach comes, we're going to have Tchias HaMesim, we're going to come back to this world. So he said, isn't that like a kind of a yerida? Isn't that, why would we want to, we're in such a gorgeous place, wonderful place, why would we want to come back into this world with all the limitations and the problems and everything else? Okay, one answer is that obviously the world to come is going to look a lot different from this world does. Even though we're talking about, going back into some kind of a body and, sort of a certain level of Gashmism, that's also goes in stages. There are specific stages of the world after Mashiach, and what happens afterwards. That's a whole other subject. But the point is that that it's going in a much, much different level than it looks like right now. But the other aspect is that, and also we're talking about after Tchias HaMesim, the whole body is going to be different. We're talking about the body of light as opposed to the body of Gashmis. A lot of the whole idea of having a body is going to be completely different. It's an eternal body at that point. It doesn't mean talking about death again, although you may be talking about it going to even higher level. But the point is that the other aspect of it is that, and this is a very important idea, that the whole concept we're discussing with different levels is in different dimensions, is that we are being blocked from seeing things that exist on at least the level of reality. We say, I don't like to talk about levels of reality, just that some things are more real and some things are less real, because everything is a creation of Hashem. But creation is real. It's there. Don't discount it. Don't think that what there is different levels of visibility, and that is affected by a few different things. The person, Hashem is revealing to us what we can handle. The whole thing about when we talk about tzimtzum, about limiting things, is the idea that you can only be exposed to a certain amount of light. We know if a person looks directly into the sun, they become blinded. It's dangerous, right? So there's a lot of stuff out there that, and there's also said you're going too far too fast. It's also related to that. It really is a problem. You have to be really watch it. So Hashem is for one thing, he's going to, because we're on a certain level, he doesn't want to blow our minds, so to speak. Right. Okay. So that's also part of the test. Is that the part of the test is concealing himself? So therefore, that's intentional also. And this is also a direct result of the Chet Eitzadas, because if the Chet Eitzadas had not happened, we would have a whole different level, a much different way. So these things have happened for a reason, and this is the way it is. But we, at the same time, we have to understand that, like, when we look into the sky and we see blue, right, or even clouds these days, that is concealing a whole array of worlds that are above that. And if you could imagine that, if you were to take it, take off the lid, so to speak, open the lid, just open up the heavens, so that you could see straight up, and you could see everything that's above that level, then you can only imagine what that would open up, and all of a sudden, I mean, it's like you think, from down here to be able to look up and see the malachim, see the kisei hakuvot, see the, these things that are going up on the higher level. All of a sudden, we would ask ourselves, this was really going on all this time, and I didn't know about it. I didn't see this. This wasn't my reality, part of my reality. And to realize that, and they see us, but we don't see them. They are waiting for our tefillas in order to start their tefillas, and they're depending on us, and we don't. And all we just read about, basically, at this level of our realities in this world, we learn about it, but we don't see it, unless you're a Navi. If you have Ruach HaKodesh, if you're Nevi'as or whatever, they did see things. Even then, you talk about Yechezkel, Anuvi with the Merkava. They talk about his vision of the Merkava was so distant. There were so many. There's so many, like pieces. It's like a reflection. He couldn't see the thing itself. He just thought. He just saw it. We'll talk about this week. We talk about Shaya Nuvi. He also saw the heavenly throne, understood the Kisei HaKuvot. And it's a question about, on what level did he see it? He was still flesh and blood. He was still a human being, even though he transcended that. He went to a much higher level. When it talks about the Moshe Rabbeinu, he went to Shemayim, to Torah, and encounters with Malachim and stuff like that. These are individuals, and what we know about what goes on there is basically from those few exceptions, those few individuals that did get a glimpse of it, did see it on various levels. We talk about the specularia on the Ira, and the specularia Shaloi Ira. It's talking about different lucid speculums and darkened speculums and all these things. That all they're talking about is, again, you have to understand why are they using these lashonos? Because they're talking about, this is a reality. This is there. How do we see it? How do we, maintain our humanity, our mortality, and still be able to encounter those things? There's a mice with Manoach and his wife, the parents of Shimshon, that they saw this Novi, and no, they saw the Malach, and it looked like it looked pretty strange. And then when he went up in the flames, so then they realized it was really a Malach, and then he said, like, what are we going to do? He said anyway, what are we going to do now? We're going to die. We can't survive this. This is like too high for us. So and then like calmed down and said, the Hashem wanted us to die, he wouldn't have shown it. But whatever. The point is that's the reaction that a person gets when they encounter, reality on that level that those other mentions about. So the whole thing that I'm talking about here in this chart, the convenes of Bria, is to get us to understand how much we don't see, but that stuff is really there. And at this level, the best we can do is become conscious of it, and then figure out how to put things together in different ways we talk about. But it's a question of being of the level of awareness. So it's a point of being able to expand our minds to encompass this added the perception that what we do see is just mamish the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, or the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. It's like this is just the beginning. But the very, very important principle is that we learn out the higher from the lower. Was what we can see visibly, what we see physically in this world is all there only because it is a physical representation of things that exist on a higher level. So therefore, by learning about things down here, that's how we're able to come to a higher understanding what's going on up there. And then our whole job is to connect it and put it together and create, links between all these different aspects of things, because they're all corresponding. So therefore, they have already an intrinsic relationship one with the other, so that it's all built according to that same plan. So therefore, we can see the similarities from one plant to the other. I might mention, by the way, that this is the basis to a large extent of the whole idea of Torah Shebechsav and Torah Sheba'al Peh is based on the assumption that you can do this, because it's all idea of limit. It's the merumas and foirish, that kind of thing. Was the idea that the whole idea that we talk about the levels of learning, including Drash and Soid, Drash and Remez. This talking about illusion. You're talking about the ability to compare one thing to the other and learn out one thing from the other. So you can say, just like we learned this over here, therefore we can apply this over here, and we can learn out what we're supposed to do over here from what we learned over there, even though they may be totally different. So then the Rabbanim going back and forth, and the whole Shakatai, the discussion in the Gemara is about, are they really comparable? They're not really comparable. In what cases are they comparable? Because they are. When you have Machlokes, because one says it is comparable, one says it's not comparable. But the whole thing is about comparison, because we're talking about being able to take virtually any situation that arises in the course of daily life and figure out what the Torah says about it. So obviously, the Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah, doesn't specifically talk about everything. At the same time, we're promised that the Torah has the tools, the keys to be able to figure out what to do in any situation. So the only reason why that works is because of the fact that these things are comparable, and you can learn out one thing from the other. In fact, I was learning a sefer that talks about the idea. I'm actually teaching that sefer right now. How we think and how.
I'm in cab in Israel, headed to Jerusalem, and it reminds me of a joke. There's a rabbi online waiting to get into heaven. It's a very long line. Looks like it's going to take hours. Standing next to an Israeli cab driver. Looks kind of nervous. And then here comes the Archangel Gabriel in his golf cart. Special treatment for somebody can skip the line. Rabbi smiles. He's dedicated his whole life. But the Archangel Gabriel picks up the cab driver. Skips the whole line.
So well.
Okay. Anyway, where was I? So it's talking about the idea of being able to think. The rules of logic, how things relate. One thing to the other. is based on the belief that he was talking about. I think about it, being able to estimate exactly how many like fruit is on a tree, something like that, and how you can learn it out by just by looking at the tree. You can come up with quite an accurate estimate how much fruit is on the tree, and it has to do with taking a small part and then it's not. But what he's saying is basically that you have to believe that Hashem created the world in such a way that we are able to understand certain things from other things. There's a posuk that says, "Mipsuri exa eluka," that from my own flesh I can see Hashem. What does that mean? It means that because the way that Hashem created my body, the structure of my own body is based on spiritual concepts and spiritual principles, which when I take those same principles and I apply them to other things in spiritual things, I can understand the way those things are as well. Because we believe that's like a tenet of the belief is that these things do indeed correspond. So this is really what I'm talking about here. Now, I don't know if you get this. I'm getting late already, so I'm going to just delve into this in next week, and we'll talk about some of the benefits of this whole looking at this. Okay, so the first thing about this chart is you'll see on the right to left, and which top to bottom is also very important here. There's a lot more that I didn't even write here. I mean, there's in terms of just the aspect of the four rows there. There are things like the directions, the east, west, north, and south is also 4. There's also the Merkava, the Shor, and the Mesher, and Arya, and Udam. That's also 4, and the Arbaminim and the Esrog is also 4, and these are all corresponding. I could put them in the same columns, the same lines as this has, and they all correspond as well in the same way. But here I just took a few of them. Also, you have to understand that there's not only an idea of 4s, but there's also an idea of 7s. And the 7 we have also in terms of the 7 Rekiam, we have the 7 Leches, we have the 7 days of the week, and 7 days in Yom Tovim, we have 7 years of Shemitah, you have 7 Shemitahs in the Yovel. You have all this stuff is all corresponding in terms of these numbers. So it's the whole thing about the 3s and the 7s and the 10s and the 12s, and all these things are corresponding across the board. So I just taken the 4s. That's just basic. But why do you start with 4? Because that's the Shem Havaya. That's the Yud K Vov K. You see on the far right. So that is those letters of Hashem. Everything goes back to letters, because that's like the first stage of creation is the letters themselves, the Aleph base. So there's all kinds of amazing calculations that how one letter builds to the other, and then the Tzfas always says the darshan, the actual shape and the form of the letters as well, and what they mean, and how letters are put together, and how they're put into words, and how things is matrius, which is the numerical values of things, and everything is based ultimately on this letters of Shem Havai. Okay, so that's the first destination in the sense come to build the Shem Havai. The Shem Havai is also built from the Yud and then Yud K, Yud K Vav, Yud K Vav K. They all also represent different levels. In any case, so after you go to the Shem Havai, so what's the next level of the Bria? Basically, is the spheres, because that's if you actually look to the next column over, you see that there are the oilemus. The oilemus are the different dimensions, so to speak, from top to bottom. The first one is Atzilus, just on the very highest level, and that contains the spheres, and the spheres are like totally abstract. There's no way you can describe them, as individual things, except they do correspond to midas and certain behaviors or whatever. So those midas are that's where you get to the Vadas and Chesed, Buddha, Tiferes, that's what you say. Malchus, those are the 10 spheres is what's up top of it. So then you come down to the Olam Habriya. But even before that, so now we said about Tzilis. So those spheres also they exist on the level of 10, but they also are, for example, for the purpose of the Kavanah Kriya Shema, for example, you've got Chochmah, Bina, Tiferes, and Malchus. So that is basically saying that there's Kesser is on the top, but which is they say the Kutzah Shel Yud, that's like the point on top of the Yud, it's Kesser. And Keser, Chachma, and Bina are basically the top two. And then there's this male-female relationship between Chachma and Bina, where Chachma is getting over to Bina, and then from Bina comes out the six lower spheres until Malchus that's included within Tiferes. And Tiferes is also a more of a masculine type thing altogether. Tiferes is actually the middle midah of those six. And then they also call them the six ksuvas, the six boundaries, because you take a cube and you've got six what you call it, the line at which the sides intersect. Edges. Okay, good. So the six ksuvas is talking about the edges. Or they could be talking about the sides themselves. It's also six sides. Actually, there's more than that. In terms of the edges, there's actually 12, right? The edges actually 12, but the sides are six. But it's all taken into consideration. Anyway, so that's the six ksuvas, and they're coming, and then that's included with the Tiferes. And then Gaudan Malchus is the bottom. It's the seventh, which is actually what includes all of them. And then there's so why is this important? Because we're talking about, besides being the basis for everything, it is also gives you a certain movement. Because all of this is really about movement. It's about how things interact, how the motion, the interactions between them. So, for example, the concept of Chachma and Bina is that Chachma and Bina are basically side by side. I'm not going to go into terrible depth, but just to get the basic idea, because this is, again, it's a temporary things that go on afterwards. So you've got the Chachma and the Bina are basically side by side, and Chachma is, again, more the masculine, more the feminine. So there's a transmittal of energy from Chachma into Bina. And then that from Bina, it goes down into Tiferes. And then there's this whole relationship between Tiferes and Malchus. Tiferes is, again, a masculine form, and Malchus is feminine, but masculine, but the Tiferes is on top, and the Malchus is on the bottom. At least that's the way it is now in this world. We'll think about Beit Yoreach, how the moon sees the sun, and that's okay, right? On that, just an overview. Okay. For one thing, it does is it gives you a little bit of a sense of the complexity of it, but it also gives you a sense of how things start out on a very abstract level, and little by little they get more and more specific until they finally get to a point where you can interact with them on a regular human basis. Okay, but it's important to understand where things are rooted and where the source is, because one of our greatest aspects of avoida, of how we serve Hashem, is by returning things to their source, connecting to the source, and realizing what that source is, and getting to go back to the source, and it's this connection. So if we know where something is coming from, then we can, make that link, because otherwise it looks like everything here is independent and kind of abandoned. And another thing I wanted to say was this idea that, when you realize what the order is, that everything has a tremendous, tremendous order, this whole concept of anything being random is like ridiculous. There's nothing going on that's random. Everything is totally planned. Everything is totally figured out and situated in exact order. There's a mitzvah of kilayim, which is also at several levels, levels of life. That you're not allowed to just combine things without you're not allowed to interbreed things on many levels. Everything has to have a place and a space and an order. When the way you plant your fields, and the way you cross what do they call it? Cross pollinating and all this kind of stuff. There's rules to all of that. When you're allowed to, when you're not. And that was one of the biggest things with the Dor HaMabul, is that the Dor HaMabul broke all those rules. And things became totally hefker. Just like the idea of the Tzfas also, it broke the rules because he broke the rule. So then everything got broken, and then everything broke. it all like exploded. And then it was a matter of picking up the pieces and how do we make order again out of this chaos that was created by our own actions. So basically, when a person does something wrong, why is it wrong? Because it's not according to the plan, and then we mess everything up. So everything now is we have to go and fix all the stuff that we messed up, because we didn't follow the plan. If we just listened to Hashem to begin with, we didn't do anything wrong. So everything would have gone according to plan. And Taka, you see, I mean, when you see an experience, you compare this general secular, lifestyle and secular way of life, so to speak, and compare that to a Jewish lifestyle. And I would venture to say, the more sheltered you are, the better off you are, in a sense, in terms of how things end up. The fact is that there is still a modicum of order and tachlis and stages of development and this kind of stuff in the Jewish community. I mean, the Jewish lifestyle. Whereas by the Goyim, it's just there's nothing at all anymore. It's nothing. You're not.
I'll never forget. This is many years ago. It was an exhibition by an artist in the National Art Gallery, and I walked into the room, and he had sculpted animals, but mixed up the parts and the animals. Huh. And when I walked in there, and I saw that, I actually felt sick on my stomach.
Uh-huh.
I actually had that reaction.
Yeah, well,
what's going on here?
Well, as you look at society today, you could also get sick. So anyway, so this Hashem likes order. Hashem created a world that you can make sense out of, and that it has rules, and it has all these inter correspondences and things. And then we go out and we mess up those things because we don't. For one thing, we don't understand. We don't understand how many things are interconnected and how they really work. And also, or we don't care, or we think that we have a better idea of how this is going to come out, to fulfill the goals that we have. We should make more money with it. We should, make it fit our lifestyle better, or whatever. But it's not Hashem's agenda. So again, it's you're every time you try to mess those things up, you are playing with fire. And the other problem is just pure ignorance. People just don't know how things are constructed. And if you don't know how they're constructed, first of all, you're much more likely to mess things up. And second of all, you're not going to know how to use them productively and creatively so that you can produce something that Hashem does want to see. Because Hashem wants us, again, we said this before, Hashem wants us to participate. He wants us to be actually managing the whole thing. The whole idea of Hashem putting the Odom in the Gan Eden in order to manage the garden, to protect it, and to attend to it, and everything else. That requires knowledge, and Adam Rishon was given that kind of knowledge. He had the knowledge to be able to name everything according to its essence, which is a very big thing, by the way. Feel about that. You had that kind of knowledge. So, again, it all makes tremendous amount of sense, and it's a matter of we have the patience and the insight and the maturity to be able to really investigate what is here and how can we use it in a way that's to Hashem's, according to Hashem's roots. Okay, so we've got the Chacham Bina Tiferet. Then again, we've got the worlds. Okay, now these worlds are mamish different dimensions. Each one is very separate from the other one, but they're stacked on one on top of the other. The avoida in the Kabbalah and davening is that we start on the lowest level, of a Siyah, this world, and then we work our way up. And if you look at the way the davening is constructed, you'll see that it's very different from Bruchas until Psik Zimra until Borchi, and Borchi to Shemon Esrei, and then it comes back down again. So the idea is that you're moving your way up through these worlds, and what you're doing is you're actually including one world within the other, which is another basic principle idea of this kollel. You're a kollel as well as you're including one within the other. So at the top, you get a total unity. And that's another big aspect of this whole thing. We're unifying all Bria into one entity, which is like as close as possible to Hashem. And it's able to get from Hashem, give to Hashem, this whole thing. But there's an idea of there's an order where we're trying to elevate and then afterwards bring down that energy from above. So we're there to elevate everything up to the unity, the point of unity, get the energy there, and then come down and distribute it again. So it's a cycle going back and forth, going up and down. It's not just again traveling through the worlds to get to the top and then traveling back down. It's a matter of actually moving the worlds themselves up into a higher and higher level till it's all one entity, and then distributing it back down. So it's just, again, some of the convenes that are involved, understanding what the void is about. Okay, so once we've done that, again, for Tzilus, we just talked about the spheres. Bria is this level of the Kisei HaKovod, and the Kisei HaKovod is also comprised of what we call 7 heichulis, which are each heichal, which heichal is like a hall. There's the Zohar talks in detail about what they look like, what's going on in each of these things. And it's a combination of malachim and the mudim, the way that the whole thing is structured, and each one has a function. And again, you're moving up step by step, and this is also part of the davening. Each part of the davening corresponds to a different heichel, and you're moving these heichelos up until they get to the top, and then you bring them down again. This is the same idea. But what is inhabiting that level is a different type of bria than inhabiting the level of Yetzirah. Because we go down to Yetzirah, then we talk about Meluchim. So you got Latat, and you got different things. You got it's a whole structure based on Meluchim. Now, what's interesting is that the same concept of spheres that we have on the very highest level of Atzilus is being repeated again in terms of the Eichulis, in terms of the spheres that are in Bria, and spheres that are in Yetzirah, and spheres that are in Asiyah. They're all the same spheres, or reflections of the spheres. So it's the same structure, basically, only it's expressed in a different way. Now we've got Malachim to deal with, and then we get down to Asiyah, which is this world, and all of a sudden we got people to deal with, and then that breaks it down itself down to this next column, which is Doimim Samei Chaim Medabir. So this is also the concept. It corresponds to the other levels, and you got Medaber, and this is also a hierarchy. So you're starting with Doimim, and how is Doimim broken up? Doimim is broken down into the Yesoidus of Aviyamayim and Ophar, which is what the Dhamma is Ophar. But anyway, so those are again, each one is broken down into the next level. And then that level is also combined and has its own hierarchy. Okay, so now we're like, and we're still only halfway through. Right? So now, after we've gone to the level of we've established what that Medaber is on the top of the hierarchy of Doimim Samei Chaim Medaber, and then we can look back and we can see what's the relationship between the Brias, which is this Doimim is inanimate, Sameach is vegetation, Chai is the animal, life, and then Medaber is man, which is characterized as being speaking. So how central is the idea of speech to the identity of who man is. Then we look back and we see who are they related to in terms of the Yesoidus, in terms of the basic elements. So you've got that Doimim is the Dhamma, obviously. That really doesn't need anything specifically to sustain it. Sameach is basically it's dependent on light as well, but it's extremely dependent on water, and to the point where you can have Sameach in the middle of the ocean where it doesn't get any light, but it's getting nourishment from the water, whatever. So you've got that Sameach is getting it mainly from the water, but Chai already has to be in the air because it could be drowned if it was in the water, unless it's a fish, and then a fish has to have some level of air in the water also. But then you go up to the Medaber, and the Medaber has to have light. So you can't live in total darkness. So that is so each one has a certain combination of the Yesoidus that go to sustain its level along the chain of the life. Then once you got Medaber, then you realize that then Medaber can also be broken down. So there we have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chayachida, which kind of together is like Neshama and Neshama. So Nefesh is more the chiyas. Already now we're expanding into the relationship between the bria and the ruchnius. So how does it have the contact with ruchnius? There has to be something in man himself which is the capability to react and to relate to ruchnius. It has to have aspects of itself which allow it that access. So nefesh is more the physical, more the animal-like energy aspect. But then you go up to riach, and riach is already more on the level of expression. ruach is associated with air, and air is associated again with speaking and with singing. And then from that level, you go up to the level of neshama, which is more involved with thinking, and that also is again connects with the spheres, because thought, which we have later on, the idea of machshava d'oraisa. So you have the brain, which is on the top, and that's related to the higher midas of the Kosov Shul, das, and then you've got going down to dibur is associated with ruach. And you've got, and the Maisa then is more with the nefesh. Now, this is also something you can look at in terms of male and female, because since the one is not given a specific mitzvah of limit Torah, she is weighted more towards the Maisa, and that becomes her preoccupation, is in terms of the active types of things that have to be done, right? She's involved in doing. Whereas the machshava level of the learning and that kind of thing is more taken on by the Zohar. But then they really come together in dibur, and one has a bigger chelik of dibur actually. In song, they both participate. So and then you got what I put, the machshava kedima is really a level of some subconscious thought, which is even on a higher level. It's something we can't even totally control, but it's really kind of the basis for the machshava, because it starts in that higher level of something that's not so defined, and then those come into the conscious thought, which is already again becoming more grounded, more practical, whatever. And then we get this carries into Torah as well, or reflects the Torah itself, because you got the pshat, remez, drosh, and soid, which again pshat is more on the active level, where you're just talking about what happened, trying to figure out what's in the tzias, what's applicable to daily life, daily action. But then remez and drosh are more in terms of the illusions of what other kinds of things we learn out from it, what kind of things related to values, and we were abstracting it a little bit more and broadening it out more to the general types of things we learn from it, and the medrash and these kinds of things, medrash and kind of drushas in terms of halachas that are not specifically spelled out in the written Torah itself. And then obviously ultimately the soid. Soid goes all the way up. That explains all these other things that we couldn't know any other way, except the fact that we receive it, by Kabbalah's idea of just receiving something without generating it from the text itself. And then that relates again to the levels of Torah, Avodah, and Milos Chasudim. It talks in Pirkei Avos that again Torah is more on the level of machshava, and Avodah is more on the level of ruach and dibur. And Gemilas Chasudim is again more on the level of action, because you're actually doing something. So the mitzvahs themselves can be categorized according to all these functions. So as you see, it's everything is there for a purpose. Everything is there as it interconnects with everything else. Now, what do we do? How does all this relate to creativity? So one sense, in terms of this first aspect of creativity, is to realize that we are ourselves a creation, and to relate to Hashem as being our creator. So that's really the first thing we talked about before, about how we relate to Hashem as a creator, and that we are our creations. But in order to, as a creation, to then become a creator, was be able to now use the resources that Hashem has given us, and to use our talents, abilities, desires, and everything, the shukah that we have to contribute to this whole thing, is if we understand a little bit of this array, this matrix of how things are created, then we can start making connections between them. We can realize that we are indeed, if we take like horizontally straight across, we can realize that the avoida has a connection with dibur, and that has a connection with we talk about praying Levi Yisrael. That has a connection with ruach, and that has a connection with maybe with someach, mind, whatever. You start to see that all this has all these things are connected. And we'll talk about maybe next time more the idea of specifically how we can link these things together and come out with new kind of combinations. Because the real idea is that once you have like virtually unlimited array of possibilities, then we start to think that, look, at this could have been done, or could be done, or can be done, and it wasn't done yet, and maybe that can be my chiddush, that can be my contribution. We'll talk more about that in the future. So a lot of this is talking about seeing all that's there. And I talked originally, the way I described it, of course, in the beginning, this idea of maintaining the innocence of the child. This idea for a child, the child has just come into the world, and it's this physical world. And he's presented with all of these things. And it takes years for the child to discover and to know how to relate to all these new things that he's being presented with. And it's discovery, it's exciting. That's what gives the child so much energy and so much excitement. He's constantly confronting new things, and everything's new and everything's amazing. So it's the fact that we lose that, in the course of maturing, is not because any of those things have become any less amazing. Everything in the creation is just as amazing as the child which confronted it. So we become jaded. And why do we become jaded? Because we don't realize that every single thing is a creation of Hashem. It says, it talks about Hashem is created everything from the Karne Re'emim to the Beit Kinim. He's looking at, what does that mean? Beit Kinim. I mean, it's the eggs of the lice, right? He's over that, right? And he created each of those things with a reason. So it's again, when you start to appreciate the complexity and the dimensional aspect of it, and how things connect, and how things could connect in different ways that haven't been tried yet, and all that Hashem is waiting for us to just take those individual things that we've been endowed with and express those in this context. There's no reason for any kind of boredom or any kind of feeling of being old or being been there, done that kind of thing. There's no way that you can't go into the same place that you go into every day and look at it in a completely different way. Absorb what's there in a different context. Also look at it from a different angle. Look at it from the perspective from above as opposed to below, or from the side. Instead of this, look at how it relates. It's just amazing. Hopefully, next week we'll do some more specific exercise in that area. But I just wanted to give just scratch the surface of what is there when you start to look at the creation as a whole from this perspective. So.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well,